Have you ever had a print fail and immediately start blaming your printer? You start changing your temperature settings, you start looking at your slicer settings, you start looking at your tension on your belt, or even replacing parts just to find out it's not your printer at all. It's actually your filament. I'm Brian DeLuca, and this is MakerBuildIt, where we turn ideas into projects. Now, a lot of printing issues actually start with your filament. We're going to discuss some of the top reasons why you may have issues printing. Some of them may be more on the beginner level, and some of them may be more advanced, but you're going to want to stick around to see how you could avoid some of these issues. Now, let's take a look. The first one, and probably one of the top things, is wet filament. Now, what is wet filament? Filament's always absorbing moisture through the air because it's hygroscopic in most cases. Now, what happens is as the filament sits out in the room, it absorbs moisture, and different types of filament absorb moisture at different rates. Some of the more hygroscopic filaments are PETG and TPU, which are pretty common, and even things like nylon. But all filaments, even PLA, is hygroscopic, so if you leave it out long enough, it will eventually absorb moisture. Now, one of the frustrating parts about wet filament is sometimes it looks like a temperature issue or even a slicer issue, but it's actually the filament itself. So really a good solution here is making sure you dry your filament, especially if you haven't used that filament in a while and you live in a humid area. Now, tip 2 sort of goes along with tip 1. Proper storage of your filament. Now, if you live in a humid area, I always recommend running a room dehumidifier in your studio or the room that you're printing in. You could also store your filament in dry bags as well as dry containers, and that will help it stay dry. A few dollars of proper storage can help save a whole bunch of troubleshooting later on. Now, this is one that may be a little less common. Always check your filament path. Makers spend a lot of time thinking about nozzle temperatures, slicer settings, supports, but we don't think about how the filament's actually moving from the spool to the nozzle. A good rule of thumb is to think about the filament path, not the spool direction. It's sort of like a righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. There's a simple guideline many makers use. If your print head or Bowden tube is below your spool, the filament is usually fed over the top and down. If the print head is above the spool, the filament will usually feed underneath and up. The reason is simple. Filament likes smooth pathways. The fewer bends and sharp turns you force it through, the easier the extruder can pull it in. Now, this is not a hard rule because every printer is different, but in most cases, following the simplest path and creating the least drag could actually help your prints as well as reduce the maintenance on your print head. Just look at it this way. The best path is always the smoothest pass with the least bends and the least turns. On those long prints, your printer already has enough to do, so why make it fight the spool also? Now, this is a really simple one, and it only takes a few seconds. Cut your filament end before you feed it into your printer at an angle. That angle helps it guide through sensors, extruder gears, and PTFE tubes, and it creates less surface space for it to get snagged on as your filament moves through bends and turns. It's a simple habit that only takes a few seconds, but can help filament load faster and smoother. Now, here's a weird one. Don't trust every spool of filament. Even the most reputable manufacturers of filament, and a lot of them out there are great, every once in a while they have a bad batch. If they have good quality control, they're less likely to have a bad batch. But it does happen every once in a blue moon. So, if you're having trouble with your print, you may want to try a different spool and see if it's that spool of filament. And here's a bonus tip. Always check your filament is not laying underneath another row on the top layers you could see. Every once in a blue moon, when we take our filament off and we put it back and we tuck this in nice and neat, we wind up inadvertently somehow putting one of the layers of filament, or I shouldn't say layers, one of the pieces of filament underneath another, and that could cause a tangle. Now, what's interesting about this is usually it shows up well into a print. It doesn't show up right away. So you may want to check that, especially on your longer prints. At the end of the day, your printer could only perform as well as the material you're feeding it. Keeping your filament dry, paying attention to your filament path, and even checking your filament before loading it can eliminate a surprising number of printing problems. So before you start tearing apart your printer, make sure you spend a few seconds checking your filament. For more on 3D printing, DIY, and maker projects, make sure you like and follow MakerBuildIt, and remember, keep on making. Oh, and remember, great print doesn't start with the nozzle, it starts with the spool.